Good morning, everyone. How are you doing? This is Amanda. What is today's date? It's the 18th of December, 2021. And I think this is going to be a fascinating video. I'm actually I cannot wait to get into this. I'm going to be channeling Margaret Thatcher, and her energy has been around me for a number of weeks, if not months. But she's been pretty persistent in terms of wanting to come through and say various things. Set the record straight is what she's saying. She is, for those of you that don't know, one of the leading iconic figures of the British political landscape of the 20th century, 21st century. And she was our first female Prime Minister. She was a figure that, when she was alive, completely and utterly divided public opinion. You either loved her or you couldn't stand her. There were very few people that didn't have an opinion about her. And I suspect that probably is still the case now. She's been dead for a number of years. I would like to talk a little bit about why I think she's coming in now. It's very interesting how she sort of arrived at my door, as it were. Although I feel as though she's always been at my door in many ways, because I would just like to say at the juncture that those of you that know and have watched my other channeling videos know that I always try and find some sort of common ground with the people I'm going to channel. And indeed, if I can't find any common ground, I don't tend to want to go into their energy. It's just not interesting to me. So with Margaret Thatcher, I grew up in a very conservative family. That's the family that I came from. Indeed, my parents met at the Young Conservatives. Okay, they met at the Young Conservatives. My dad used to canvass for the Conservative Party, which basically means you knock on people's doors. When Margaret Thatcher died, my dad actually sent a letter. I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, but he sent a letter to Margaret thanking her for her service, as a lot of people did. But definitely, as a teenager, I grew up with the influence of the Conservative Party. She's mortified that I then went on to vote for Tony Blair. I've actually voted for all of the political parties in the UK. So, and now I don't know who I would vote for. It'd be quite interesting to talk to her about the current political leaders that we've got, and I will be doing that. The other thing that we have in common is I believe she has a granddaughter called Amanda. So she has, the thing about Margaret that's very interesting is that I am recording this right on the cusp of the Gemini Full Moon tomorrow on the 19th. I actually tried to record this a couple of weeks ago, but my energy was a little bit low and I just didn't have enough fuel in the tank to be able to deliver it as well as I could do. But equally, there's always a divine timing when you sit down with spirit. The Gemini full moon is very interesting with her because it's as though what I think is going to come through in this video is the dualistic side of her nature. And by that, I'm talking about the more unseen Margaret, who is very different from the public Margaret that you saw when she was alive. She was actually called the Iron Lady. This lady's not for turning. She had a very austere, severe, structured energy. But there's another side to her which is much looser. And shall I just talk about that before we do anything? Because I think that's important. One of the things that she showed me in fact, there's a few things that I've been shown that have really, really surprised me and I'm still processing. One of which is also linked into her past lives and where she came from, but we'll come to that in a minute. There's a lot to get through in this video. So if you haven't already, get a notebook, get a cup of tea, and then come back. But yeah, this dualistic nature, what she showed me was another side to her, and the only way I can describe it, well, let me show you where I think it's evident. It's evident in the young Margaret Thatcher. So this is a picture here. Hopefully you can see that without the glare from my camera. Can you see that picture of her in her younger years? And you can see that she's got a softer face. They say that as we get older, you get the face that you deserve. And that doesn't mean she had a horrible face as she got older, but her features hardened somewhat. She was called the Iron Lady at the end of the day. But as a younger woman, her features were a lot softer, much, much softer. there's almost, and this is where it's like, you know, we have to sort of stretch our imagination a little bit. There's quite an ethereal quality to this Margaret. This is what I'm trying to say. There's two Margarets. And this other Margaret, which never was really allowed to come out and play, she never allowed it out of the box. But it was evident when she was younger, was a more free-spirited, I wanted to say, I know she was young, but youthful energy. It's almost as though she was born into a life which she chose, where she had to be the grown-up, okay? She had to be the grown-up. And so a more youthful, playful, more trivial side of her was not allowed to be expressed. But it's not just that, I know this is going to sound really wacky, but one of the things that I was shown was, those of you that grew up in the same sort of era that I did, there used to be a very popular book, still popular, called The Flower Fairies. And they are these very ethereal looking sort of fairy-like figures. They've got flowers in their hair. They're the complete antithesis to Margaret Thatcher in her very structured suits, you know, power dressing, I suppose you'd say. But there is an aspect of her that was like that was more nature loving, that was free-spirited. And I'm not sure, I can't quite get a gauge on the energy, but it's either, I think it was an aspect of her being, or it could be or, it could be both. She went on to have twins, Margaret Thatcher, and they say that twins run in the family. And I'm wondering whether she was a twin in the womb. This is very common. You can have twins in the womb, and then one basically dies very, very early on, even sometimes before the mother knows that they're carrying twins. And the strongest twin often is the one that survives. And I have a feeling that she could have been a twin, but the twin never was born. But as I say, very, very early days of the pregnancy, the mother might not even have known that. Because I feel, again, there's this sort of twin energy with Margaret. And it's as though this other aspect of her walked alongside of her, but only in private. You never would have seen it in her public life. So I found that quite fascinating. This other thing about twins with her, yes, she went on to have twins. Her children were twins. And I'd like to talk about her blind spots, particularly with regard to her son Mark, is one thing she wanted to talk about. But equally, although she was the Iron Lady and she was somebody who was very much a solo fighter in the ring, is what she's saying, often she partnered up with people and was known as like a duo. So here I'm being shown Ronald Reagan. I'm also being shown Mikhail Gorbachev, the Russian president of the time. A couple of weeks ago when I tried to do this work, and I felt her energy around me so strongly, I knew I was going to have to bring her through. I said this on Instagram. I went down into the kitchen and I said to my husband, I said, okay, guess who I'm going to channel next? It was very sort of like a very light-hearted remark. We were just about to have dinner. And he knows what I do, but he's not up to date with who I'm channeling or what I'm doing in this room. He lets me get on with it. And he had no idea I was even thinking about Margaret Thatcher. But anyway, I said, guess who I'm going to be channeling next? And he said, Ronald Reagan. And I thought that was really interesting confirmation, because again, it's like Margaret and Ronald sort of go together a little bit, certainly in terms of their politics of the day. They had a great friendship, and I'm very, very well may bring him back another time. But that would be one example of this twin energy. The other one, of course, was her husband, Dennis, who she was married to for years, and they were very loyal partners. Now, in terms of where did Margaret Thatcher come from, let's just do that first. And then we'll go on to past lives, which I'm going to write here in big letters because there's so much to get through. I'm worried I'm going to forget stuff. So where did she come from? Sat down with her energy yesterday and was really trying to get a handle of where she came from. What was very clear is that some of the names that often we reel off in these types of video, Palladian, Andromedan, none of them were really feeling as though they fitted, probably with the exception of Syrian. Okay, so if you look at that energy, again, I know I have a very strong Syrian energy, so I can feel there is a Syrian energy with Margaret Thatcher, very much sort of like commander style. A lot of Syrian energy is, not always, but a lot of us are leaders in the field, is what she's saying. Leaders in the field. Okay, she's saying own the fact that you are a leader in your field, Amanda. Thank you, Margaret. But she was a leader, obviously, of her day. So yeah, the Syrian energy, we've got confirmation there from her. But as I've always taught with regard to galactic soul groups, it doesn't mean that you're just from one place. Now, the other thing that I got from her, which I'm still scratching my head over, but it's fascinating, is I kept hearing the word Vesta. Now, again, those of you that follow me, you know that I keep talking about, I keep getting words given belonging to the same letter. There are 2 V's with Margaret Thatcher, okay? Interesting, there are 3 V's, she's saying. Okay, because she's now showing me the V that Winston Churchill did through the war. I have to be careful I don't do it the wrong way around. I think it's that way is the way for victory. She's saying V for victory. She's also saying V for Vesta, and the other one is V for virgin. Now, she wasn't a virgin. She obviously had children, but there is something about her energy which is very chaste, very chaste. And nothing wrong with that. Again, I know it sounds weird, but the last person I channeled on my page here was Michael Hutchins, and he's almost like the antithesis of this energy. He wasn't chaste at all. He was quite loose in terms of, you know, sexual freedoms and the way he behaved. An interesting little segue between Michael and Maggie, again, we've got the 2 M's, is that Michael, one of the things he gave me, he was Australian, was the chant that Australians do. And the chant that Australians do is Aussie, 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 oi, oi, oi. One of the chants that went with Margaret was Maggie, 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 out, out, out. That's what her haters used to say in the day. Maggie, 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 out, out, out. They'd have their placards. They hated her guts, you know. So it's quite interesting, the segue with those 2 chants. But equally, there's this thing about, it's duality. It's the 2 polar opposites. Almost a very sexual, liberated energy with Michael, and then this very chaste energy with Margaret. The other thing with Vesta that is fascinating, I mean, in terms of a planet, let me just get it up, because I had to research this because I didn't know it. Vesta, have I lost it now? Oh, here we go, Vesta. Vesta is, I believe, is the 2nd most massive body in the asteroid belt, surpassed only by Ceres, which is classified as a dwarf planet. It's the brightest asteroid in the sky. Vesta is occasionally visible from Earth with the naked eye. An interesting thing about Vesta, whether you call it a dwarf planet, an asteroid or whatever else, is that it has the same 3 layers of core of the crust of our Earth. You know, if you cut our Earth, planet Earth, into half, you have the 3 layers, the mantle. Vesta's the same. Now, it was called Vesta, I believe, after a Roman goddess who was, again, it's all linked into this sexuality, but it's more virginal. Is that such a word? Careful how I say that. It's more linked into the virgin energy. It's purity. There's something here in Margaret Thatcher's energy, and it'd be interesting for you astrologers out there to look whether she's got what her placement of Vesta was in her chart, because there's definitely something there. I'm definitely onto something here. I would not be so rude or so crude as to ask her about her sexual life, because it's none of my business, and she would close the door very firmly in my face. It was between her and her husband, as it should be. She grew up in an age where it's very much private, you know. She can't stand this whole energy of people shouting from the rooftops their sexuality. Now, I know there is, I'm not going to do it in this video, there's too much to do, but I know some of you from the LGBT community have asked me to question her on this. What I'm getting is her views were very much of her day. Okay, they may not very well be her views now. When I'm saying she doesn't like to hear people shouting from the rooftops, it isn't a criticism of anybody from, for example, the gay community. She would feel the same way about a heterosexual couple. It's none of anybody else's business. Okay, it's behind closed doors. It should remain private. And she's saying she hates the salacious, gossipy energy of today's press, which was there in her day. She's showing me page 3. It's just like that is the antithesis of her energy. The other thing about the Roman goddess Vesta, which this planet was named after, is it links into the Vestal Virgins as well. So again, there is just this really interesting energy around her, linked into her past lives. I feel as though, yeah, this is interesting. What she's saying to me is that in her past lives, she's also showing me Boudacia, which of course is probably not a surprise to some of you. Boudacia was the Roman, no, she was, sorry, Margaret. Boudacia was a British queen. Well, she's a mythological figure. Some say she didn't exist, although Margaret's saying she did. She drove the Romans out of the British Isles, as it would have been then. So it's like this sort of warrior queen energy. She wasn't actually a queen, but she was like a warrior queen energy. There's again, very quickly read a little bit up on Boudacia. Again, she's a very controversial figure, but I think I'm right in saying that one of the things that fired Boudacia up to fight back against the Roman army was the defilement and the rape of women, including herself. And she went at it in a very vicious way in that lifetime. Again, you can't judge a soul, excuse me, by what they were 2,000 years ago, okay? You have to see the soul in its development. So what we've got now is her coming back and just bringing to the table that, yes, I was this, Boudacia. There is definitely an energy of the Vestal Virgin type energy around her. Whether it's just that it's something she aligns to, I'm not saying she was one, it's something that she aligns to. She's very... even in spirit, where obviously from what I have seen in terms of people I've channeled, people tend to open up a lot to, different belief systems and suddenly realise that, oh gosh, my way isn't the only way. In terms of her belief system, she's still, I would say, very linked into the Christian energy. And she's showing me a little Bible, whether it's a New Testament or a Bible, I'm not quite sure. It looks like it's a small Bible. It's like a pocket Bible. It's a leather-bound one. Now, whether she had it in life, she's shown me she did, but it's like a prized possession. But it's as though she's still got it up there, which you might think is a bit odd because it's like, well, she's up there. Why does she need a reminder? But she's got it for whatever reason. It holds sentimental value is what she's saying. She relied on it very heavily. You see, this is what I'm trying to get at, and I will get to the public Margaret in a moment and talk about things like the mining strike and all of that. But I want to also bring through on Gemini Full Moon this dualistic nature, this private Margaret who actually did have the Bible. She did rely on the Bible. You might not think she lived by it, but she tried her best is what she's saying. And she leaned on it heavily. I'm also being shown this Bible in her later years when she got ill towards the end of her life. Anyway, so yes, past lives, Boudacia, I'm being shown that very clearly. She's saying it's not a lifetime to be glorified. She's showing me herself barefoot in a battlefield with blood on her legs. And she said it's something that is... What do you want to say about that battle? There is no dignity in war, is what she's saying. There is no dignity in war. battles and the nature of battles may have changed through the centuries, but it's never pretty, is what she's saying. Okay, yeah. Right, let's get to a little bit about who she was. We've done that. Oh, just some signs that I keep picking up with her. This is all interesting for you as well, because, you know, you might find that you've got Margaret Thatcher knocking on your door. I'm warning you, particularly if you're wanting to step into a leadership type position, or you're needing guidance on how to just do your mission without worrying the whole time about what people think. Margaret Thatcher was very much somebody who did not care what other people thought. She really didn't. And she didn't really care whether you liked her or you disliked her. She knew that to achieve what you needed to achieve, or what she needed to achieve, she needed to just go for it. And I think she's displayed that in many lifetimes. So some of the signs, anyway, that she keeps giving me, again, I know it sounds random, but spirit is random. Every time I go to run a bath, which is every night, I go to put my bubble bath in ever since Margaret's been around. And she's like, where's the lavender? She seems to be obsessed with lavender. I mean, maybe women of her age, of that era, were. You know, my grandmother was probably obsessed with lavender. There's something about lavender with her, to the point where I was going to put my makeup on today. She was like, where's the lavender spray? So definitely the scent of lavender, the aroma of lavender was important to her for some reason. But she's saying also lavender is an energy of balance. And it's interesting she's bringing up lavender, you know, because again, those of you that follow me know about my violet pill teaching. Now, Margaret Thatcher is as true blue as you can get. Now, remember, in the UK, the blue is the more right wing. The red is the more left wing. It's the opposite to how it is in America. And Margaret Thatcher is a true blue, okay, true blue. But yeah, she keeps showing me lavender. So there's something here about that which I think needs to be in a separate video for another day, Margaret Thatcher on violet pill, because that is just blowing my mind. Anyway, smell of lavender. This morning in the garden, I was just thinking about her energy, because she keeps calling me dear. Not in a condescending way. Again, it is of its time. Those of you that, you know, are my sort of age, who used to have grandmothers, of course we all did, there was this expression, certainly in the UK, where you would call somebody dear. It's a bit like when I channeled Elvis, and I believe that in the part of the States that Elvis comes from, he used to come on and he in my channel, he kept calling me ma'am, or ma'am. And apparently it's something that is done in that part of your country. Same with Margaret of her day. She keeps calling me dear, but it's not condescending. It's actually really lovely. It's like and I was thinking about it, and I thought it's almost like a grandmotherly energy. At the moment that I thought that, I'm not kidding you, I was looking out my kitchen window and a white feather just literally goes past the window like that. And I don't see white feathers that much anymore, because Spirit tends to give me other type of signs now, but I knew that was her. So white feathers with Margaret, lavender with Margaret, and the other sign that she keeps giving, which isn't, come on, it's obvious, is it? Is it obvious? The handbag. She was always with her handbag. She never didn't have a handbag, but it was a particular type of handbag. I meant to bring it to show you. I've got one in my collection. It's what I call what do I call it? The Queen Mother's handbag. It's a handbag with like a very short little handle. You know, it doesn't go over your shoulder. You carry it. So you carry it like that. Funny story. First date I ever had with my husband, who's very like an eco guy, and he's into nature, and he made me trek across some path, you know, on a country walk basically. Whereas I probably would have preferred to be wined and dined. But anyway, we went on this country walk, and to this day he still makes fun of me, because he said, "You turned up with a bloody Queen Mother's handbag." I did. So it's that type of handbag. So that's a sign as well that she's around. I mean, I know it sounds weird, but it may well be that those of us, you know, male or female, if you like carrying handbags, next time you're choosing one, you might get a little tap on the shoulder. It'll be like, that one over there. There's something about the handbag. Tell us about the handbag, Margaret. Power symbol, she's saying. Power symbol. Yes, she's all about power symbols. There's a brilliant quote, which I probably haven't got to hand. I have got some of her quotes to hand. I mean, look at her quotes. They are so funny. I mean, some of them are awful and terribly, you know, not politically correct now, but some of them are quite funny. She's not meaning to be funny, but they just are. There's some comment where she's talking about... she was very much not into sort of like lazing around in your PJs all day, you know. It's like a day that's worth living is a day where you've achieved, you know, and it's a day where you've got up, you've put your suit on, you've gone out, you've done it. You can go to bed and you can rest knowing you've accomplished something. She was all about accomplishment. So into that comes sort of the power symbols. She's now talking about Winston Churchill. She keeps bringing Winston Churchill in. She's saying she would like to bring Winston Churchill in to talk to us. Okay. All right, there's a segue there between Margaret and Winston, because she's now showing me Winston Churchill's cigar. He had his cigar as a power symbol. So she's saying my handbag became a bit like that. It was my power symbol. Yeah, so that's part of it. Okay. I've got pages of stuff here that have been coming through, so I just want to try and do it in a sort of logical order. I think, oh yeah, the other thing here, you might not be able to see all these things behind me, but last thing about past lives with Margaret. This is an odd one, guys. This is odd, even by my standards. When I was saying I couldn't get a handle on where's she from, is it Palladian, is it this, is it that, I was getting nothing, apart from Vesta. I then got out Kyle Gray's Keepers of the Light deck. And I just thought, okay, I'm just going to play with this. And I'm going to shuffle and I'm going to ask, show me Margaret Thatcher's energy. I did it 4 or 5 times because the first time the cards came out, I thought, no, that can't be right. So I put them back in. They kept coming out over and over again. I'm still working through this one. Shall I show you what they are? It's an Egyptian energy. These cards kept coming out for her. Serapis Bey and Horus. Egyptian energy. Now again, I have not got the time in this video, but I do know she visited Egypt. I do know that she got involved with the Middle East peace process. I believe there was some sort of, she was trying to engineer some sort of arrangement whereby Palestinians in exile could maybe live in Egypt. I'm very, very rusty on this. You need to research it for yourselves. But there's an Egyptian energy here anyway. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if she wasn't a queen in Egypt. Nefertiti, who was that? Let me just Google this. I'm just hearing something here. Was she a queen? I think she was. I've probably said it wrong. You know me with my language. Sorry, I can't help myself. She was the queen of the 18th dynasty of ancient Egypt, the great royal wife of Pharaoh Akhenaten. Sorry. Her and her husband were known for a religious revolution in which they worshipped one god only, or the sun disk. Well, okay. That's something to explore then. Whether it's that queen or not, I do think that there might have been a queen energy in Egypt as well. Wow. Well, I'll tell you what. So it's interesting, isn't it? Because again, when she was Prime Minister here, she became quite grand, I think is a polite way of saying it. And one of the things, I mean, she's listening to me talking and she knows I'm going to say this, so she's okay with it, because she didn't mind criticism. One of the things that I didn't like towards the end of her 3rd term was she did become very grand in her posture, her speech. And there was a famous thing whereby one of her, I guess it was she had a grandchild anyway, and she came out of 10 Downing Street and she said, we are a grandmother or something. She was we is an expression that's used by royalty. It's like the Queen's we. Her her and the Queen, you know, there was always this sort of like slight undercurrent there in terms of who is top dog. I can see where it came from, because in Margaret's eyes, at soul level, she wouldn't have been aware of this at a human level when she was incarnated as Margaret Thatcher, but at a soul level, her soul, she's saying now, her soul was bristling a little bit, because she was used to being queen, she was used to being top dog. So we're being shown here Boudacia, the warrior queen who drove out the Romans, and we're also being shown Queen Nefertiti of Egypt. So formidable. Queen of her party, she's saying. She's quite proud that in terms of the existing Conservatives that are still here, she's still regarded as queen of her party. Okay, we'll talk about that later, Margaret. There's something else I wanted to say at this point. Let's just hold on a minute. Being a queen. Can't think. Right. Oh yes, thank you. It's come back. Okay. Right, why she came in, why I'm sat here on a Saturday, the Saturday before Christmas, and doing this. Why am I doing this? It's because she came in so strongly a few weeks ago, and she came in on the back of another queen. Now again, this isn't a queen, but it's a queen, it's a woman who's been a queen in a past life. I don't know what queen she was, but she thinks she's the Queen of Europe. I'm not being facetious here, I'm picking up the energy. I am talking about Ursula von der Leyen, I think she's called. She is a European Commissioner. Let me just get a photograph of Ursula, because Margaret Thatcher, let me just get Ursula, there we go. She looks very like Thatcher, you see. Look at that. That's what she looks like. I mean, it's the same hairstyle as well. Very coiffured, very structured clothing, power dressing. Bit of an ice maiden, very much like Margaret was as well. Very similar energies. Anyway, Margaret Thatcher's not too impressed with this woman and would quite like to go into battle with her. And I think probably they have been in battle before in other lifetimes. But the problem is that Margaret is no longer here on the world stage, and this woman is. So in spirit, Margaret Thatcher, and you might say, well, she should be above all this. She's still really interested in the political landscape of our world, believe you me. She's getting a little bit, you know, wanting to get back in there. And this is her way. It came in on the back of something that Ursula von der Leyen said a few weeks ago about mandatory you-know-whats rolling out across the whole of Europe, which is thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. And the thing about Mrs. Thatcher was that she believed in the power of an individual state to govern itself. And towards the end of her third premiership, she, of course, became more anti-European in her stance. She more because it was about wanting to have control of our own currency. We never adopted the euro as an example. Own currency, own politics, own laws. She was very much about that. Each country should be in control of that. Trade deals are fine one way, or, you know, if it works for you. But any other greater autonomy she was against, and sort of still is. So somebody like this who's sort of saying, okay, we're going to make a sweeping dictate about anything. It could be about anything. It's like, hold on a minute, not on my watch. So she's feeling a little frustrated. That's why she came in particularly. Right. I would like now for us to take a sip of drink, and I would like to, before I ask her some questions, I would like to just tell you a little bit about who she was, for the people that don't know, and also some of her background is fascinating. I'm only going to spend less than 5 minutes on this, probably not even that long. This is a website called the margaretthatcher.org website, and this is the bit that I particularly wanted to read out, because when you understand where somebody's come from, you tend to then be able to understand who they are, why they do certain things, etc. And it talks about when she was born and what was going on in the world. So let me just pause the camera, because now I can't find the bit that I want to read. Hold on. Okay, I found it. This is fascinating. So she was born in Grantham, which is a small town in eastern England, on the 13th of October 1925. When she was born, in that era, 1925, the town was still recovering from the Great War of 1914 to 18. There were fewer children than usual because so many men had been away fighting and some of them were killed. As she grew older, people began to be worried that there would be another war, and unfortunately they were right. The Second World War broke out in 1939 when she was 14 and lasted till 1945 when she was 20. So, yeah, she's basically born just after the First World War, when the country's recovering. Then the Second World War starts, so lives through that. It says also during her childhood, lots of people had no jobs and very little money. The Roberts family, her maiden name, were luckier than most, and they did baking for people who were unwell or didn't have enough to eat, which people from their church took round. They went to services together twice every Sunday. So she grew up at a time when terrible things were happening in the world and life was much harder than it is today. But people helped each other and they were very proud of their town and their country. I thought that was interesting because it just gives a little bit of energetic background in terms of the energy that she grew up with. Let me just close that down now because I wanted to read you something else from somewhere else. Her numerology, come back to that in a moment. So yeah, she became Prime Minister in 1979. She had 3 terms in office. During her first term, it was characterised, one of the big events was the Falklands War. This British territory had long been a source of conflict between the two nations, as the islands are located off the coast of Argentina. Taking swift action, Thatcher sent British troops to the territory to retake the islands in what became known as the Falklands War. Argentina surrendered in June 1982. There were mass casualties there in that war that she was held responsible for. One of her quotes is, "We lost 255 of our best young men. I felt every one." So the Falklands War was the first term. The second term was very much characterised by, was it the mining strike? She also had an assassination attempt on her by the IRA. Cold War politics with Mikhail Gorbachev. She voiced her support for Reagan's air raids on Libya in 1986 and allowed US forces to use British bases to help carry out attacks. Third term was characterised by the poll tax. I remember that. Huge public protests. It was the only time she had to back down. Huge riots on the street when she tried to bring in the poll tax. She resigned on November the 22nd, 1990. Interesting, she resigned on the 22nd. She's a number 22 numerologically. Let's just do her numerology and then we'll get to some questions for her. She's born on the 13th. Her numbers of significance are 13, 22 and 4. 13 is the energy of rebirth, regeneration, the phoenix that rises from the ashes. She inherited a country that many said were on its knees because of the power of the unions. And some will disagree with this, but some will also say she helped rebirth the nation. 22 is a master number, and it is linked into hard work, hard bloody work. just carrying on, hard work, determination, grit. It takes all of the ideals of a master number 11 in terms of, oh, we could do this, we could do that, I have the vision to do it, and it does it, okay? It does it, it makes it real, it brings it down to earth. Number 4, often you don't boil a master number down to a single digit, but if you did, it would be Uranus, which is a planet linked into revolution. Expect the unexpected. And indeed, as a country, she probably personified that. Right, let's now get to some areas that I want to talk to her about. And let's firstly talk about the mining strike. The miners' strike, rather. So this was in the 1980s, and I remember this very, very vividly. Going back to my conservative upbringing, I remember Margaret Thatcher and Arthur Scargill, who was the leader of the mining union, battling out on the front pages and on the streets. She forced the closure of many mining pits, which destroyed many communities, particularly in the north of England, that relied solely on the trade of mining and the communities being supported by that. To this day, I know the wounds are still very raw there. And she crushed the unions, basically. So, and what is said is that in some parts of this country to this day, there hasn't been the regeneration. So where was the rebirth? So I wanted to talk to her about that. And when I sat down with her 2 weeks ago, she showed me something. So I'm going to paraphrase a little bit here. It's quite an interesting analogy, this. Let me just close my eyes to concentrate again. So, thinking about the trail of devastation and destruction that came in on the back of the mining communities losing their lifeblood, losing their purpose, losing the money, losing the salaries, families literally having nothing, no jobs being available locally to replace the mining jobs because there wasn't anything else. It was just about mining. This is what the communities were built on. So a lot of families really, really suffered. And I think it's fair to say that there wasn't maybe a great deal of help coming from her government at the time for them. Well, that's certainly what is said. Whether it's true or not, I've no idea. So this is what she showed me. She showed me, she gave me the analogy of Christmas Carol. So those of you that know the story of Christmas Carol and Scrooge, she would place herself as Scrooge here. Okay, so Scrooge is basically shown 3 visions. He's shown a vision of Christmas past, Christmas present, and Christmas future. And one of the morals of the story is that he's given the opportunity to right his wrongs before he dies, to see that the way he's been behaving is actually impacting, for example, a family. So in that family, it's the family of Tiny Tim. And the ghost takes him and shows him the reality of the family on Christmas Day who have very little monetarily, threadbare, clothes, all the rest of it. But they have each other. There is love within the family. There is love within the community, but they have very little. And Scrooge basically mends his ways because he sees that if he doesn't change the way that he is, the ghost of Christmas future shows that when he dies, people will be laughing at his grave, basically. So he comes back from these 3 visions, and he's able to. He changes. He becomes a better man, and he gives more money. Basically, that's what he does. He goes out. He buys the biggest turkey for the family, and he celebrates Christmas. And he's a changed man. It's all about redemption and change and waking up to our individual actions and how they can impact people, but we're not aware of it because we're set in our ways. That's what she showed me. And I think that says a lot. And I think what she's trying to say by that is, she's saying sorry is the hardest word. It's that Elton John song, sorry is the hardest word. She found it hard in life to say sorry. and to back down, because she had built up this persona, these two sides to her being. This other persona was the Iron Lady who never turns, who never is wrong, who she prided herself sometimes on not listening as well. Some of her quotes that are now infamous are about, you know, one of them is something like, I don't mind what my cabinet ministers talk about as long as they obey what I say, you know, something like that. So again, very like tunnel visioned. But this thing about Christmas Carol, I think what she's trying to express is that she's realised the impact of what those actions were about. But having said that, I wouldn't go so far as to say she regrets. She's saying it was very much, again, it's this thing about it was of its time. They weren't productive. They weren't earning money. It's very black and white. So because they weren't, they had to close. But the Christmas Carol bit that's important is the fact that she realises that she could have done more, that she should have done more, and didn't. So I think that's says it all, really. Let me just see if there's anything else she wants to say about the whole miners' strike. Arthur Scargill. I know some of you in other countries don't know these names, but Arthur Scargill was the leader of the trade unionists, as it were. You and Arthur up there in heaven, Margaret, wherever you are. This is very much a UK reference, but if you go into a stately house in the UK, like aristocracy, they used to have these ludicrously long tables, you know, really long tables, and it's like you sit at one end and somebody else in the old days would sit at the other end, and you'd be like, hello, can you pass the salt and pepper? You know, it's ridiculous, just very big tables. Well, she's at one end, he's right at the end of the other, he's at the other end. So what she's saying is they're still miles apart. You know, there hasn't been much of a healing there. There hasn't been much of a coming together. She's saying that it's important to realise that when you pass over, you don't have to meet or mingle with any soul that you don't wish to. When you're on Earth, you come together to do whatever you're meant to do, interact however you're meant to interact, play out the script however you're meant to play it out, and you have different beings and different souls that come to do that. But it doesn't mean that afterwards, when you've passed over, you all necessarily get together again. She's saying, I will never see eye to eye with that man. Okay. I'll never see eye to eye with that man. So she hasn't softened there with regard to him. And he hasn't softened with regard to me, she's saying. No, exactly. Okay. All right. Let's move on, because I've got a lot to get through. We can come back to some of these big questions in other videos. I just want this to be an introduction to her, really. Let's talk about... I wanted to ask her about Jimmy Saville. Now, Jimmy Saville actually got a knighthood. Whether it was under her reign or patch, I don't know. But certainly she was photographed with Jimmy Saville a number of times. And Jimmy Saville, after he died, it became known he was one of the most prolific child abusers that the UK has ever had. And I'm sure has links to elite groups, etc. So I wanted to ask her about what she knew. And this is what she said to me. She showed me, I just heard the word blind spots. Okay. She says, let me just go back into the end. I heard blind spots. I had blind spots. Were they deliberate blind spots? Sometimes, yes, she says, but not always. With regards to him, she's talking about Jimmy, she's saying he pulled the wool over everybody's eyes, including you, Amanda. And that's true. Okay, and I will just say this on record, because I think it's really important that people understand. If you're not in the UK, you won't necessarily understand. People of my age group who grew up with Jimmy Saville, okay, we all thought he was a bit of an oddball, eccentric, a bit creepy maybe. But nobody saw what he truly was, because it was very, very well disguised. When he died, I remember, because he came from Leeds, which is very close to one of my hometowns. And in Leeds, people lined the streets to say their farewell to Jimmy Saville. This was before all of the allegations started to seep out. And I remember putting on Facebook on the day of that parade through Leeds, rest in peace, Jimmy Saville, you know, and I can't remember what else I said, but it was along the lines of, you know, I felt something when he died. It was like, oh, it's a shame he's died. It's like, you know, good old Jimmy. We all knew him. We all grew up with him on the TV shows. And then, of course, all the allegations started coming out. It was like, oh my God, no, I did not know that. Had no clue of what was of that other side of him. And she's saying, can you please realise that some of the people that he was photographed with, including me, would also fall into that category that we didn't necessarily know? Now, some of you are going to come back and say, of course she knows. You don't know that, okay? I'm just telling you what I'm being told by her, which and she's explaining why she didn't know, let's put it that way, because there must have been gossip and gossip about him and people saying things about him. I'm sure there must have been, as it's now being said in the BBC that people knew. But she's saying I had blind spots. She said my blind spots were big. And a blind spot, if you think about it, she's showing me vision. It's to do with her whole demeanour. She was just so tunnel visioned. She was so single-mindedly focused on her mission, what she was here to do. A lot of the other, what she would call clutter, she didn't even let it into her mind, her energy. She just didn't want to know. It's a bit like that quote that I've just said about her ministers. It's like, I don't care what they're saying about me. I don't care what they're doing, as long as they just obey what I say. That's what she was all about. She's showing me now herself just sitting at her desk, into the small hours. I know she did this, into the small hours with the light going. Everyone else is asleep. She's sitting there writing, reading. She was famous for only having 4 hours sleep a night, okay? Digesting everything she could. But it was all about what she wanted to do. It was very, very tunnel visioned. And nature of the beast, she's saying, is she didn't listen to many people. So if tittle tattle is what she's saying would have come her way, she wouldn't have basically taken much notice of it, whatever it was. She's saying it's not excusing it. She's just saying that this is the reality of what it was. Now, in terms of blind spots, she then led me to her son, Mark. Now, which is nothing to do with child abuse or anything like that, but, you know, I can't remember the ins and outs of it. But again, Mark Thatcher used to get a lot of bad rap in the press for not being, for having faults, let's just put it like that. I can't even remember what he did now. It doesn't matter. But, you know, certainly she seemed to always appear to be very blind to his behaviours. And anything he did was all right in her book. That's how it appeared. So what would you like to say about Mark now? She says, I've said it already. Okay, she's a bit curt. She doesn't want to say too much more. It's about having blind spots. She said, I had blind spots to various people's characters and flaws. And that would also be one. Doesn't take away her love for her son, but it does explain just, literally, unless it's there in front of her and it's something that she is wanting to look at and deal with, anything else just isn't in her sphere. It's like she's blind to it, and definitely not always one to listen. Not one to listen. So, right. Done Christmas Carol. De Saville Miners. Geoffrey Howe. She keeps mentioning Geoffrey Howe. Was he the one who stabbed her in the back? I think he might have been, because basically she's saying I had a blind spot with him as well. I think he could have been the one that... She's showing me his posture. She's a little bit... Geoffrey Howe's posture, bless his heart, was a bit like... His whole energy was very much... His body language was very sort of like... He was a bit... I don't know how to express it. Well, like that, basically. It's just like someone had deflated him, she's saying. But then suddenly he rose, you know, and she didn't see him coming. So she's like, I had a blind spot there. is what she's saying. Okay. Right. Let's ask about today then and all the rest of it. Boris, just have a drink. Interesting I say that, let's have a drink. Interesting I said, let's have a drink. I don't know if there was something about her and drink. Interestingly, this photograph of her and Boris, I hadn't realised I was doing this. She has got a little drink in her hand. Maybe she liked a little tipple, you know, every night or something. Feeling she maybe did. She's saying all the best ones do, good dear. She's talking about Winston Churchill again. Did he have a little tipple every night? I think he did, didn't he? Yeah, I think so. Anyway, right, you and Boris. So here is a photograph of Margaret Thatcher and Boris Johnson, who is now our Prime Minister. She's already said to me that this famous expression of Margaret Thatcher's, which is "this lady's not for turning," she says about Boris Johnson, he turns all the time. He turns all the time. Also, what she said to me off camera yesterday was linked into "I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth." It comes back to the fact that however far she rose in society, she came from very humble beginnings. You know, she was born and she lived above a grocery shop as a child. Her, you know, humble upbringing. So Boris doesn't have a humble upbringing. Boris is pretty much what we would call blue blood. You know, he's very linked into the whole aristocratic family story. She says, "I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth," and he turns all the time. So shall we ask her again about Boris? Okay, this is going to be interesting. Boris Johnson, Mrs. Thatcher, what would you say to him if you could? She says, "Oh, I do try, dear, I do try." She's showing me her whispering in his ear. She's saying it's hard to get through the hair. She's got a very sharp tongue, but there is a bit of humour there. It's hard to get through the hair. Anyway, she is. You see, nobody sees Margaret Thatcher as having a sense of humour, but and people often say she was humourless because she was, you know, in terms of her public persona. But there's this other side, whether it's just come out more in spirit, and she's just wanting to loosen up a little bit. But I'm feeling that. Right, Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson. Mrs. Thatcher, what would you like to say about Boris Johnson? His days are numbered, she's saying. His days are numbered. He's written his own exit docket. What is she saying? Docket. He's written his own exit docket. She's almost showing me like an old-fashioned, I can't believe they still do this in the House of Commons, but used to be this thing whereby if you gained entry into a place, I'm not talking about vaccine passports or anything like that, I'm talking about old days. You used to have to dock in and dock out. I think that's what they used to call it. Maybe that's what miners used to do. There's something to do about, I think miners used to do it. She's showing me, it's like an old-fashioned system where you'd have a card or a piece of paper and you put it into a machine and it showed that you'd registered for work that day, okay? And she's showing me he's soon going to be docked out, as it were, is what she's saying. His exit date is looming. He's written his own destiny there. There's nothing that I can do for him. He doesn't listen either. Boris Johnson, Margaret Thatcher, what do you want to say? She's taking me into 10 Downing Street, which is where the Prime Minister of the UK lives. She's saying he's asleep at the wheel. It's interesting. She took me into the where they have the cabinet meeting, and interestingly, at that cabinet meeting, it's a big long table, but there's people sitting all around it. And she's showing me him asleep at the wheel. He's tired, she says. He's tired. I'm actually being shown him physically slumped over at the table, asleep. She's saying he's asleep on his watch. I was never asleep on my watch. I was always awake on my watch. She's showing me now the Falkland Island War. There was a moment in the Falkland Island where she had to make the command to sink, I think it was the Belgrano, it was an Argentinian ship. She's showing me herself being awake through all of the midnight hours, through crisis. And in her prime ministership, one of the crises that she lived through was the Falklands War. And she said, I was never asleep at the wheel. I was never asleep on my patch. He's frequently asleep. And I think she's actually talking physically and symbolically. It's like she's now in the, I don't know what they call it, the cabinet office. And she's walking around the table. It's very interesting. You know, like a sergeant major in an army, when they inspect the troops, and they inspect them in terms of, you know, have you got your, you know, are your boots shiny? Have you straightened your tie? You know, have you got all of your, whatever you're meant to have? Have you loaded your gun properly? Have you cleaned it properly? All of that type of stuff. A sergeant major will inspect his rank. It's like she's walking around this cabinet office now with the existing UK government, and she's stopping at a couple of the chairs and just inspecting the people sitting in them. I get the impression she's not too impressed with any of them. For some reason, she's stopped by Savid Javid's chair, who is our, I can't remember what position he has in the party, but anyway, those in the UK know who he is. She's saying he could be polished up a bit. Almost as though there is some, remember this is her opinion, might not be your opinion, there is some talent there. She's very, it's very Sergeant Major-like. It's very sort of like, you'll do, you won't do. You, what are you doing in the room? Get out. You haven't even cleaned your boots. She's saying the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who's called Rishi Sunak, who I know is a millionaire or a billionaire. He's married to one of the very, very wealthy women. She's saying he's had somebody else clean his boots. She seems to have got a little bit of a chip on her shoulder in terms of people who've had it handed to them on a plate. And that would include the likes of Boris. It would definitely include the likes of Rishi Sunak. She's got more respect for people who've worked their way up. We're going back to Savid Javid now. From memory, I think I'm right in saying that he is the son of immigrant parents. Can't remember his story, but there's a story there about immigration and him having come up through the ranks, having worked his way up, is what she's saying. It shows tenacity. It shows that he understands what work is. He's got some sense of the common man, is what she's saying. Common man is an expression that is used in the UK. It's not meant to be offensive. It just means the average man or woman on the street. She's saying it's ridiculous you have to keep explaining yourself like this in 2021. She's very anti the whole woke culture, the whole PC culture. You know, you shouldn't have to explain yourself the whole time. People should understand what is being said. They don't know, Margaret, so, but yes, okay. So, yeah, she's stopping by his chair for some reason. The rest of them, she's eyeing up our Home Secretary, who is a woman, Priti Patel. She's looking her in the eyes. And Priti Patel is looking her back in the eyes. And there's a bit of a staring match going on. And I'm hearing Margaret wins. She's saying that Priti Patel, she's saying she... Just need to get the words right. She... not plays to the crowd. It's something to do with... Margaret's quite dismissive of all of them, to be perfectly honest, but there's something about, I'm not quite sure what her mission is. I'm not quite sure what she's trying to achieve. I'm not quite sure, no, this is better. I'm not quite sure what she really believes. This is what she's trying to say. I'm not quite sure what she really believes in. Does she really believe in what she's saying? Or is she just saying it for whatever reason? Paycheck, power, whatever. There's this thing with Mrs. Thatcher, whether you liked her or not, that she believed in what she was doing. She completely 100% believed in what she was doing. And she's looking around this cabinet now, this government, and she's like, do any of them believe in any of this? Do any of them believe in it? I'm not, and now it's interesting, she's only got halfway around the table, halfway around the government ministers, and she's walking out of the room. It's just like, she's quite dismayed by the state of the party. She's quite dismayed by the representatives that are there. What about my MP, Margaret? I quite like him. Tobias Elwood, MP for Bournemouth. I didn't vote for him last time. I quite like him as a man. What do you think of him? Because I think he's got a bit of integrity, hasn't he? Yes, she likes him. I think he's got an army background. It's one of the, also there's this thing about showing up and order, having order and structure. It's to do with your mindset, she's saying. There's definitely like an army reference here, but it's to do with the way that the army instills in you respect, structure, obedience, doing what you're told, follow, all of that. She's still quite in that whole energy. As to Boris, anything else to say about Boris? I just get the impression he's on the way out. She's showing me now his family. I'm seeing them leaving the door. I'm seeing them leaving through the door of 10 Downing Street. She's saying he'll be given a more graceful exit than I was, though. There's still a little bit of a chip on the shoulder here. She left in the back of a black cab in floods of tears on the day that she was... her party turned against her. This is the thing. Her party turned against her at the end. This is how she feels. And she feels as though she was betrayed. And she left in the back of it wasn't a cab, it was I don't know, whatever it was, Daimler or something. There's a famous photograph of her leaving, and she's got tears in her eyes and she's waving it goodbye. And she said, it tore my heart in two to leave. She said, we had unfinished business. It tore my heart in two to leave. And she's showing me Boris, and it's like when he leaves, he gets he's graced with being able to leave and exit the stage better than I did. I'm seeing him just walking out. She's showing me Gordon Brown now. Gordon Brown was a Labour Prime Minister who famously, when he left Downing Street, he walked out of the door with his wife and his children. He said whatever he needed to say, and then the cameras just shot to him just walking away, just walked away. And it was actually quite a beautiful exit in many ways. So that's what I'm being shown for Boris. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. But there's definitely a thing with Margaret whereby and it's interesting because if he leaves office, he will have been stabbed in the back by his own party, because it's his own party that want him out. So I'm feeling it's his own party that boot him out, not the public. But there seems to be, maybe there's a deal that's made. I think she's alluding to some sort of deal that's made. Maybe I don't know whether he voluntarily steps down, or it's just the way that it's handled feels as though he's allowed to she's saying there's some sort of deal that maybe gets made, or he doesn't lose much. It's like he lives to fight another day. He doesn't leave in total disgrace. Margaret's saying there's always going to be a part of the population that will still love him. no matter what he does. But she said there's another part of the political system that have had enough with him. His face no longer fits. So who's going to step in next? She says the timelines are still unclear. I mean, I'm being shown Savage Javid, but goodness knows, it could be somebody else. Right. Margaret, let's now put this to one side. We're probably running into quite a long video here, so let's just see anything else that you want to say in this particular session. Let's just show you her photograph here. Margaret Thatcher, Iron Lady, 1982. Seagulls, I'm hearing the seagulls. The seagulls, she's reminding me of the bombing at Brighton. Was it Brighton or Eastbourne? I think it was Brighton. The IRA tried to assassinate her, and they bombed the hotel where all of the Conservative Party were because they were holding their party, what do they call it? You know, the party conference was at Brighton. I think it was Brighton or Eastbourne, can't remember. And yeah, they bombed the hotel, and she was lucky to survive. I remember watching the news the morning that it happened, and they were pulling people from the rubble. I'm sure some of you in the UK remember Norman Tebbit being pulled from the rubble, and he had this awful ghostly white face because his face was covered in all the rubble dust, and his wife sustained life-changing injuries, ended up in a wheelchair. He's lovingly looked after her for many years. I don't know whether they're still alive, but the point is that, yeah, Margaret Thatcher survived it, and you know, they pulled her out at whatever time it was in the morning, and then within hours she was back on the stage at the conference, and I always thought that was extraordinary. I mean, that is leadership. That's the thing again about nobody sleeps on my patch. The show must go on. It's very much that energy. I'd like to ask her about something here. One of the standout quotes for me from Margaret Thatcher's time was that after that happened, she was famously quoted as saying that we should starve the terrorists of oxygen. And what she meant by that was media oxygen. She was talking about starve them of publicity, too much emphasis being put in the media onto who these people are, what they do, etc. Just starve them of the publicity of oxygen. That was a famous quote. So let's just ask and bring that into maybe modern day as well. Terrorism still alive and well in different parts of the world in different ways. What do you want to say about that now? I was right. I was right. She was right. She was right. Whether you like her or you don't like her, she was right. She's saying too much energy, too much time, too much broadcast, too much media of that which seeks to destroy society. The great technological revolution, the internet. She's taking me back to her childhood, the arrival of TV, limited sources of information. She's all for additional streams of communication and information, but within that there is disinformation and there is propaganda. And it's very hard to police that. And it comes down to the individual to police it for themselves and to be discerning, but not everybody is. Yeah. Okay, guys, I'm getting a little bit tired. It is quite tiring doing this type of work, so and you might be as well. So I'm just going to look at a couple of quotes from her, and then I'll come back for another video. See what you think of this one. I think it's been interesting. Let's just see. Some of these quotes might trigger something that she wants to say to me. Oh, okay, this is the first quote. This is what I've just said. Democratic nations must try to find ways to starve the terrorist and the hijacker of the oxygen of publicity on which they depend. Yeah, this was another quote that I was trying to paraphrase earlier on in this video. Look at a day when you are supremely satisfied at the end. It's not a day when you lounge around doing nothing. It's when you've had everything to do and you've done it. I think I've become a bit of an institution, you know, the sort of thing people expect to see around the place. The one last thing I'd like to just quickly ask her about in this video, one of the things she wanted to talk about was entrepreneurship. So we live, and I think, again, this is one of the reasons she wants to come in to help at this moment in time. We're living in a world where many jobs are going. And again, think back to what I said about Christmas Carol and Scrooge suddenly realising they could have done more. I think this is her way to come back and to try and help to give more now for people that are losing their jobs for all sorts of different reasons. The economy of most countries around the world is in dire straits. We'll talk about that another time, she says. But it's to do with believing in yourself and being able to turn the key within yourself to find your entrepreneurial spirit. Everybody has it, she says. Everybody has this entrepreneurial spirit. It's also hardwired into the survival system. To survive, you have to have an entrepreneurial spirit. You're entering times where the age of the entrepreneur is upon us. It has never been stronger and more supportive energetically to work for yourself, to create something for yourself, to live by your own hand, by your own means, to find your own contribution that you can make to society, to yourself, to your own life, to not rely on others to do it for you. To not rely on other companies to do it for you, but to be able to find that entrepreneurial spirit that you have within yourself, to be able to thrive in times of challenge and times of purgatory, is what she's saying. Very aware that these are very difficult times for many people around the world at the moment. She's also bringing in an energy here of discipline. And she's showing me the mind, being disciplined in your mind. She's saying this also comes into mental health too and physical health, to be able to operate properly as a human being, but it feels as though it's more like she's wanting to say human machine. I mean, it does feel a bit mechanical the way she's expressing this. For the human body, she's saying. Okay, the human, she's correcting me, not machine, body. She doesn't like that word machine. She said for the human body to operate as efficiently as it can do, you have to have discipline. You have to do things that are going to help you. And again, it's this thing about not lying on the couch all day, you know, lying on the couch all day, eating all the wrong things, getting slack, getting flabby, getting flabby in mind, flabby in body, flabby in spirit. All of that is not going to help you. Nobody else can get you off that couch but yourself, is what she's saying. Nobody else can get you off that couch but yourself. You have to be your own coach. You have to be your own inspiration. And you do it for you. You don't do it for anybody else. She was quoted as saying there's no such thing as society. There is just a nation made up of individuals. I haven't got the quote to hand. But I'm picking that she still believes that to a degree, which is the fact that it starts with the individual. She's saying, I do still agree with that. She's saying it starts with the individual and it ends with the individual. Individual responsibility, individual choice. individual day of reckoning as well. She's showing me now again the analogy of Christmas Carol. She's saying nobody needed to sugarcoat it for me. I was big enough to be able to look at my actions, what I'd done, what I hadn't done, and take full 100% responsibility for it. Nobody wants to take responsibility for anything anymore. People want to sweep things under the carpet. This is one of the reasons she's now going back to Boris. She's saying it's not that she doesn't respect Boris, but it's just that in this respect she doesn't respect Boris. She doesn't like the fact he sweeps things under the carpet. He's always sweeping things under the carpet. He's always thinking things are just going to go away. Things only go away when you take responsibility for them. And the thing that you most have to take responsibility for is yourself. Your family and yourself. It starts and ends with you. The state can be there to support, but the state should not be there to do it for you. Just want to ask about the energy of freedom, just quickly. There are a number of quotes attributed to Margaret Thatcher on freedom. I put one of them up yesterday on Instagram, so let me just retrieve it again. And again, going back to Boudacia and her lifetime as that. Boudacia was known as a freedom fighter. Okay, so Margaret Thatcher is always about standing up for freedom and sovereignty. And so this is the thing about the EU and this woman, Ursula von der Leyen, who Margaret Thatcher definitely wants to go into battle with, get her teeth into, is what she's saying. She has got a slight sense of humour. I think it's humour. It's like you're not free if you don't have control over your own laws, your own land, your own money, and your own principles. So will not be told what to do. There's this quote: a man's right to work as he will, to spend what he earns, to own property, to have the state as servant and not as master. They are the essence of a free economy, and on that freedom all our other freedoms depend. So she definitely stands up for freedom. Anything to say on freedom? I'm now being shown the energy of Nelson Mandela, who I know she met. I don't think they were bosom buddies. But again, it's interesting. Spiritually, she's obviously developed as a soul. She wouldn't be sitting here talking to me if she hadn't. And I will just say to you that one thing I was aware of with her energy over the last few days is she's been in my room very much as you would imagine her, with the suit, and it's still very much Mrs. T. And she's been walking around this room and she's literally been almost like, not quite with a magnifying glass, but it's sort of, that's the energy of it, looking at all the different bits, like, what is that? The pictures on my wall, the tarot deck, she just doesn't get at all. It's like, I wouldn't dream of bringing a tarot card in now for Margaret because she doesn't understand it, and that's fine. She doesn't need to understand it. The crystals, but she's interested. She's quite curious. As funny as this sounds to some people, easy to attack when I say things like this, but I really believe this to be true. What I have noticed every time I channel somebody, they're coming to hopefully try and help us, entertain us, inspire us, educate us, whatever, set the record straight, whatever. But they always seem to have something that they can get from being in our presence as well. Okay, it's almost like there's something that they can heal by being in our presence. And one of the things I feel that with her coming closer to somebody like me, which is not her natural arena, she did so because it's an opportunity to get her message out again and people talking about her. But it's like she is curious in terms of these curios that you have around you, she's saying. These curios. all my curios, my crystals, my cards, my tools, my beautiful paintings, all of it is like my sprays. Like, what is that? What is that? It's like not quite ready to receive it in terms of, I don't want a spray of it yet. I don't necessarily want to pick the crystal up, but it's like I'm quite interested. So there's a bit of that going on. It's very fascinating, very fascinating. That's her talking, not me. It's very fascinating, very fascinating. Very much like the Queen would. You know, the Queen, I mean, again, I'm talking Queen of England, the number of people she's met over the years, thousands of people, and I'm sure some of the time they're presented to her and that you talk about whoever you are, and she can't be interested in all of it. And so the Queen would say, yes, that's fascinating, very interesting, even though it's dull as ditch water. But I don't think Margaret's being just polite to me. I think she is. She's definitely been like looking around. She loves the roses that I bought for her. The first time I tried to record this a few weeks ago, I hadn't had time to go and get roses. And I know that when I went and got those yesterday, she was very appreciative of that. She likes kind gestures. I think she liked flowers, actually. I'm seeing her liking flowers, particularly in her older years when she was sick. She was able to enjoy flowers, I'm hearing. We haven't touched on her later years when she got very ill. I think I'm going to have to do that another time, so I don't think I'm going to do it justice. But anything else to say? Let me just have a quick look through my notes. Anything that I've missed out for this video? It's probably enough. And final quote, Margaret. Let's just do one. Oh, I can't believe it. I'd not read that. This is a comment from Dennis Healey, who is, he was a Labour MP, so the opposition. And this is a criticism that Dennis Healey made of Margaret Thatcher. Oh, this is fantastic. Dennis Healey is quoted as saying, "For the past few months, she has been charging about like some bargain basement Boudacia." Right, Margaret, you can say something to that. Well, he would say that, wouldn't he? He never charged around and did anything. Yeah, she's still got it in her. She's she doesn't respect some of these people that criticise her. She didn't in life, and she doesn't particularly anymore, even in death. And that's okay, you know. I think we need to get past this whole point of view, which is that when we die, we all become angels floating around in heaven, being nice to everybody. I mean, yes, you're more in a unified energy. She is a soul, but her soul energy is a fighter. She's a fighter. She has an archetypal energy, which is of a fighter. It's like a warrior queen. Queens don't necessarily... queens can look down on others. This is the thing about her. She's still got that. So a future lifetime with her, I would expect, it's none of my bloody business, but, you know, I would encourage her, if I was God, if I was God sitting up there and the soul that is Margaret Thatcher comes to me and says, I would like to reincarnate again. And God looks down his scroll of all the times that she's been here already and all the past lives she's had. And what, you know, her pluses, the benefits, the drawbacks, all of it. I think God would say, why don't you go back, Margaret, and try to explore this other side of your nature, the thing that I talked about at the beginning, the flower fairy type energy, the Margaret that's soft, because she is in there. It's just that she never allowed her to come out and play. That Margaret. Okay, that Margaret. For that Margaret to be in the spotlight, and yeah, I can see it's in my halo light there as I'm doing that, okay? For that Margaret to come out and play. She never allowed her to come out and play. So, I hope that you enjoyed that. I found that really fascinating. The sun is now coming out, which is very much linked into Vesta, which I believe is linked into Margaret Thatcher. I think she's got a strong association with Vesta. It's not just an astrological thing. It's the fact that I think that when I say she comes from there, I think there's life there. I think there's we've all had lives on all of these different planets, and I think she's had a life, or she's associated with Vesta, and she's definitely been on a planet whereby women were already in control. But again, don't think that just has to be the divine feminine floaty, you know. You know, women through history have sometimes been bloodthirsty. Boudacia certainly was. Have also been like the Florence Nightingales, etc. You know, we've got to get away from this just viewing souls in a very one-dimensional way. Margaret Thatcher definitely has a very strong archetypal energy that she's expressed lifetime after lifetime, but I suspect when she next comes back, she might choose something differently. But then I might not, she says. Let's just ask her about that. I can't resist. Future lives, Margaret, because she's definitely not reincarnated yet. In fact, it's interesting. I feel as though she hasn't even really wanted to talk to any of us before this. It's as though what's going on right now in the world and the suppression of freedoms and the amalgamation of all of us doing the same thing at the same time, believing everything the same, you know, following the same rules. She hates all of that. She's very much for like individuality in terms of countries and states. She doesn't like the homogenization of everything. That's why I think she's coming back in to sort it out, is what she's saying. She's now shown me Emmanuel Macron. Hasn't got a lot of time for him. Who have you got a lot of time for? Have you got a lot of time for any of them, really? Okay, this is really going to alienate some people as I say this. She's not endorsing Donald Trump, but she's showing me Trump, and she's saying it's only and purely because he's a bit like her in that he doesn't give a damn, basically, in terms of whether you like him or you don't like him. He's single-minded, and he just says he yeah. What else do you want to say about Donald Trump? Okay. She says, I respect him, I may not like him. Okay. That doesn't mean she doesn't like him. It's just she's keeping her options open there. What do you mean you respect him, but you don't have to like him? Okay. She's saying that's the point I'm trying to make. You don't have to like somebody to respect what they do. Sorry guys, I'm getting tired. I just want to try and nail this last bit about Trump and Margaret Thatcher. Hold on. Okay, we're going to do it a different way. It's interesting with her. It's like when I asked her about the cabinet, she didn't give me a straight answer. She took me into the cabinet office and then walked around the table. She wants to go into, where does he live? Margala or whatever it is. She's taking me in there. Okay, wherever he now is. I know where it is, I just can't pronounce it. Right, okay, so we're going in there, where he now lives. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, she's going in. She's got a handbag. Trump is sitting down at this table having dinner, and Margaret sat down and she's thumped her bag onto the table. She's put a bag onto the table, almost like to announce her arrival, and now she's putting it down by her feet. And Donald Trump is getting up from his chair, and he's being quite gentlemanly. He is going round to the table. He's going round to the back of Margaret's chair, and he's pushing her chair in like men used to do in old days. Now, you might say Donald Trump doesn't have the respect for all women like that. That may very well be true, but it seems to be that Donald Trump respects Margaret Thatcher, which is why he's doing that for her, okay? It's about her, it's not about women in general. He's got great respect for her. And they're sitting down together at this table. I'm being shown food that's being delivered to the table, and it's just like they've got something to discuss. They're discussing. They're putting the world to rights. But it's linked into, it's very generational as well. It's almost as though both of them, in different ways, are quite un-PC. Whether you like them, whether you don't like them, okay? They speak a similar language in some way. And there's a side to Margaret Thatcher's nature, which of course is about, she was always about making money. That's what she encouraged, making money. And Trump has always been about making money. And whether you like Trump or you don't like him, he's very much somebody who puts America's interests first. And Margaret Thatcher very much put Britain's interests first. So they have that commonality. So she's saying it's not that I don't like him. She's saying it's just the fact that there's a degree of mutual respect there. Of the ones on the stage at the moment, of all the tables I could sit at, I'd probably go and sit with him because I'd have a good discussion. And she's saying he'd also give back as good as I gave him. So there seems to be this thing also about, you know, these are not her words because Margaret Thatcher wouldn't use these words, but it's just the only way I can express what she's trying to show me. Cut the crap, you know, cut the crap. Let's just get down to it and talk, you know, that type of thing. Whereas she said with a lot of current politicians, it's like it's all just smoke and mirrors and you can't get to what they really mean. And she's showing me Emmanuel Macron and she's saying a slippery fish. And indeed, how interesting that she uses the term a slippery fish, because at the moment there's a fish war going on between the UK and France. And she's saying stand up for your rights, you know, with him. So, guys, I'm going to leave it there. Take care. Hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to bring her back at some point and we'll cover other stuff. Have a good day. Much love. Please like and share the video and keep the comments clean. Otherwise they won't appear because I'm not having people just ranting on my channel. If you've enjoyed my video and would like to make a comment on it, please do so, but please keep it clean, whether it's about Trump, Thatcher, or any of the people that I've discussed. Let's just thank Mrs. Thatcher, though, for coming forward. Thank you, my dear, she says. My pleasure. And it's like she's now just, she's been seated, she's standing up, she's wearing a like a twin set. She's got the shoes, the flat shoes, she's got a handbag. She's just walking out the door. I don't know where she's going, but she's got another appointment. It's like she's scuttling out the door now. She's left my house. She's gone. Okay, thank you, Margaret. She said, she's saying, we can make an appointment for another day. It's like she's showing me her diary. And she's saying, we can make another appointment, dear, for another day. Okay, so take care, guys. Much love. Bye-bye for now. Fascinating, isn't it? Bye. Bye.